Greetings to my Northgate Church family and anyone else who's watching this video. We are doing a series of messages this week concerning Holy Week. What events happened during Jesus' final week on this earth before he rose from the dead on Easter Sunday. And so this is Wednesday of Holy Week. Let's see what happened on this day in the life of Jesus. We read in Mark 14, verses 1 through 3, these words. Now the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread were only 2 days away, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law were scheming to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him. But not during the festival, they said, or the people may riot. While he was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of Simon the leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She broke the jar and poured the perfume on his head. So here we see it is 2 days before Jesus died, and he's in the home of Simon the leper, which is interesting. This is probably a man who Jesus healed of leprosy at some point in his ministry, and this man, Simon, is seeking to show his love for Jesus by hosting Jesus in his home. We see another person here showing love and devotion to Jesus. It's a woman who pours a jar of expensive perfume, very expensive perfume, on his head. By the way, we learn in John chapter 12, verse 3, that this is actually Mary, the sister of Martha and Lazarus. So why did Mary at this point pour this expensive perfume on Jesus' head? It was to show Jesus her lavish love for him, her generous love, her deep devotion for him. Why did she pour perfume as a way of showing love? Well, in the ancient Near East, when an honored guest came into a home, they often gave him things like oil for his head because of the hot and dry air of the Israel climate, that this oil would refresh the honored guest and be a way of showing him honor and love. But Mary just didn't give Jesus a little bit of inexpensive oil for his head. She lavished her love on him by giving him some very expensive perfume to refresh him and to show her love. There's another reason why Mary gave this perfume to Jesus, lavished her love on him. We see later that Jesus explains that she was preparing him for his burial in verse 8. Mary may not have known it, but Jesus was about to die for the sins of the whole world. And God in his sovereignty was also showing this as a symbol that he was being loved because of his being willing to die for our sins. Also in verse 1, to show this, it talks about Passover is coming. And on Passover, the Jews had killed, back in Moses' day, killed a lamb, put the blood of a lamb on their doorstep so that they would not be killed, their firstborn would not be killed like the Egyptians. So the blood of a lamb had saved the Israelites in Moses' day. What these first three verses in this passage is saying here, first of all, is that because Jesus died on the cross for our sins, out of gratitude, we should lavish our love upon him like Mary did. We should be very generous in how we express our love to Jesus. So this is in contrast, by the way, with other people in the passage who did not love Jesus. We see in verses 1 through 3, for example, the Jewish leaders actually hated Jesus and wanted to kill him. At the end of the passage, in verses 10 and 11, we see Judas, who's going to betray Jesus. In the scene about Mary pouring perfume on Jesus, we see that there were other people in the room that wanted to be very stingy with their love for Jesus. In fact, they were criticizing Mary for pouring this expensive perfume on him. Verses 4 and 5, it says, some of those present were saying indignantly to one another, why this waste of perfume? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages and the money given to the poor. And they rebuked her harshly. So we see people who are being very stingy in their love for Jesus. By the way, in the same passage that's in John 12, in Matthew 26 tells us that these people who were criticizing Mary were actually Judas and the other disciples. At this point, they weren't caring about the poor. They were cared more about money at this point. They were being stingy in their love for Jesus. Let's not be like these people. Let's be like Mary. Let's be lavish and generous in our love for Jesus and the way we express our great love to him and to other people. For example, let's work hard. If we're in a marriage that's difficult, let's work hard to restore that marriage. Let's be lavish in our love for Jesus and others in that way. If there's people around us that we don't especially like but who need our help, let's be generous in the way we help them and lavish our love upon them for Jesus' sake. If there are people around us who are hurting, let's be lavish in the way we spend time with them and are patient to listen to them. Let's be lavish in our love for Jesus in that way as well. If there's people who don't know Jesus, let's take time to share the good news with them about him, even though they may criticize us for it. Let's be lavish in our love for Jesus in these many ways. Now, when we do that, what will Jesus' response be to us? It'll be the same response he gave to Mary. We see here in verse 6, for example, when the people were criticizing Mary for being wasteful with the perfume, here's what Jesus said in verse 6 of Mark 14. He says, "Leave her alone. Why are you bothering her? She's done a beautiful thing to me." And then in verse 9, Jesus says, "Truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." So here's the deal. When we're lavish in our love for Jesus, even when people around us think we're being wasteful in our love and in our time and how we spend our money, Jesus will praise us. He will be proud of us, and he will use our lavish love to help others to hear about and believe the gospel. So the question I would end with this morning is this: how lavish and generous is our love for Jesus? How deep is our devotion for him? In light of the cross, Jesus deserves a lavish love and a deep devotion. God bless you all, and have a good rest of the week.
Ah.